Hey everyone, this is Lance from Epics'N'Stuffs, and this is my long-term review video for the Elegoo Mars. So let's get to it. A little bit of background info. I work in the video games industry and have done for around about 8 years now. I'm a character artist by trade, but sometime in 2019 I decided to dive into resin 3D printing after previously experimenting with FDM machines. At first I was sculpting little pug miniatures, and then I transitioned into the world of D&D. I then started to offer the models and miniatures via Patreon in my mini factory, and as part of the proposition I wanted to support my models so my consumers had various different options to print with. I eventually landed on the Elegoo Mars as the machine I used to do all my test prints and products on. I had played with other machines in the past, but at the time the biggest selling factor for me was price. I now have 5 Elegoo Mars machines for reasons I'll go into later in the video. 4 of those machines are the regular Elegoo Mars that you see right here, and 1 is an Elegoo Mars Pro. The Mars has a pretty low price point of entry at roughly £230 for the regular version. This was and still is a great price for these machines. So what do they come with? They come with a power adapter, a plastic or metal scraper, some later revisions come with both, some protective gloves, a measuring cap, a USB key for your files, and some Allen keys for general maintenance. There are some additional consumables needed to get started and for in future, so let's talk a bit about them quickly. First of all, you'll need resin. It doesn't come with any, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's cheaper than its competitors. However, that means you're not paying for resin that you either A, don't want or might not like. A litre like this will typically set you back around about £30 to £40. Ultimately, you'll need stuff for when cleaning your prints, and at the top of that list should be some form of protection against the resin itself. As you may already know, resin is toxic, so you'll need some additional nitrile gloves, as well as something to help with breathing and protection against the fumes. You'll also need some isopropyl alcohol, either 70 to 99%, as well as some containers to house the models themselves. You also might want an ultrasonic cleaner to help clean your prints. Once the model is clean and dry, you'll want to cure it now completely in UV light. If you're lucky enough to live somewhere in the world that has sun all year round, then take advantage of it. If not, purchase yourself some 405 nanometer UV lights. Finally, after curing, it's advisable that you prime your model, otherwise it will keep curing and potentially become brittle and or crack. So let's talk about the printer itself. It's what's known as an MSLA printer, which basically uses UV light to cure cross sections of your model. You fill the vat with UV sensitive resin, which comes pre-equipped with an FEP sheet, which is a very thin, transparent sheet of plastic which allows UV light to pass through it and cure the resin. The build plate will then lower itself into the resin at specific increments to build a model of cured layers over time. The current layer is displayed on screen along with the countdown timer and progress bar. The printer itself is really simple to operate. The power input and switch are located on the back of the unit, along with the USB port for the files. This is a big complaint with a lot of small form factor MSLA printers. In honesty, it's not really bothered me, but if space is a restriction, you might want to get a USB extension cable to at least stop you from having to hunt for the USB port around the back. Upon turning the machine on, you're greeted with 3 options on the 3.5-inch touchscreen. Tools on the left houses a lot of the maintenance options, like moving the print bed up and down, homing the unit, allowing you to test the screen's exposure, and setting the Z height, which I've never actually used personally. System is just service information, language choice, and touchscreen calibration for the touchscreen itself. And finally, print, which you can browse your USB drive for files you have sliced. It's super easy and simple. It's also good to note that the screen and the FEP film themselves are classed as consumables. They are competitively priced and simple to install. If you get stuck, Elegoo has some really good videos walking you through how to replace both on their website. It's good to check these, as the Mars has had some incremental revisions throughout its lifespan and they differ ever so slightly internally. I've had to replace several screens and FEP sheets over the last year of use, and I've never had any trouble. And I'll point this out now, just in case people ask. You unscrew these two screws here to take out the VAT. As you can see, that's the FEP film on the inside there. The masking tape is used for a few reasons. One, if you're unlucky enough to pierce the FEP film and have resin leak out on the inside, this will help avoid resin leaking everywhere. Also, when putting the VAT back in, it helps stop the metal parts of the VAT touching the edges of the screen. The price of consumables and the ease of maintenance on this machine is actually one of the biggest pros for me. As I said earlier, I have 5 of them. I could easily replace every single Elegoo Mars I have with a large unit like the Peopoly Phenom. However, if you have an army of items you need to print, say for an Etsy store or a Kickstarter, and the Phenom screen were to fail, then my entire production line would be halted and I'd have to fork out hundreds for a new screen and wait for it to get here before I can install it. In this instance, I can take a Mars offline and replace the screens, which are readily available on Amazon, for roughly £20, whilst my 4 other units are churning away. Of course, if you need the increased size and volume, then get something bigger. If you're just printing masses of minis, then maybe spare a thought to your production line's redundancy. The Elegoo Mars has a build volume of 120mm by 68 in X and Y, and 155mm in the Z. The build plate itself is really easy to remove. It just unscrews and you pull it away. And that is how much space you have to print your models on. The print quality is brilliant. I typically do all my prints at 0.05mm layer height. And in a good orientation, it is very, very hard to see layer lines. The masking LCD on the machine is a 5.5-inch 2K unit. So that's a resolution of 2560 by 1440 pixels. I have a very, very high success rate with all my Mars machines. Typically, anything that has gone wrong with it has been either my fault due to poor maintenance or incorrect model preparation. As for software, I personally use Prusa Slicer and Chi2Box for my supports and model preparation. The Mars uses a Chi2 board and comes with Chi2Box supplied on the USB key. Chi2Box itself has profiles specific and ready to go for the Mars. Chi2Box has been pretty decent overall in the last year I've been using it. It's had some minor usability issues and bugs. The supports it generates have not been great in later revisions. It tends to over-support models, which makes it a bit more of a nightmare to clean. I'd advise watching some support tutorials. There are plenty online. I even have one myself on this channel. I'd also recommend watching some videos from 3D Printing Pro, who uses Chi2Box a lot, and he's documented some great tips and tricks. The Elegoo Mars community is great. It's one of the larger ones out there. The Facebook page is fantastic, and Elegoo's customer support is brilliant. Elegoo themselves are also pretty pro-consumer, so I have no complaints there. The 3D miniature printing community is also super nice and has plenty of advice, so be sure to go and join as many as possible. So you've seen some prints and heard me ramble on, but does the Mars have any negatives? Indeed it does, it's far from perfect. The USB placement on the back, as I mentioned earlier, is a big negative for a lot of people. For me, the sound of the regular model is pretty loud. I wouldn't recommend using this in a small room, but rather a large ventilated area. It's not so intrusive though when you've got something like headphones on. The acrylic panel on top looks really nice, and it comes in a few various guises: orange, red, or the My Mini Factory green edition. But it stays clean for about a week. Unless you're super meticulous and clean it constantly, you'll get resin and crap over it fairly sharpish. Finally, some revisions of the build plate come with very small locating bolts. Many people have had these go bad, and I can see why, but so far mine are still holding out. Some later revisions of the Elegoo Mars build plate don't have this issue, as they are a lot larger. Additionally, some resins can smell really bad. Not necessarily the machine's fault, but its lack of fume management doesn't help. Overall, the Elegoo Mars is a great machine, and I can wholly recommend buying one. I hope you found this video even the slightest bit helpful, and before I duck out, I just want to thank all my patrons, and it's thanks to them I can make some really fun models. And if you're interested in 3D minis, please take a look. If you're interested in the creation of 3D minis, I've started a Twitch channel which you can check out every Tuesday, Thursday and Sunday between 7 and 10 PM GMT, where I also have one of these machines printing live on cam. Finally, we have a Facebook page and a Discord community, again which you can follow in the links below. I will try my utmost to find all the products that I utilise when printing with my Elegoo Mars, and again I'll provide links below if I can. Thanks again everyone, have a great time 3D printing.